said, I'm Aurélie Andriamialison. I'm a kids life coach, and I was trained in psychology. I work in public health for many years, and I'm the owner of the Seeds of Joy Kids Life Studio in Hall near Lausanne and Geneva, between Lausanne and Geneva. And I'm also the happy mom of 2 adolescent girls. I'm also a Kids Life Studio affiliate, and basically my work is really to empower children from 6 onwards to become the leaders of their own life. Let me tell you now why I became interested in this topic of technology. First of all, I heard a lot of complaints by parents at home on the way screens were managed, and I should start with mine. Always tension, conflicts, and we were with my husband, we were realizing we were not showing the right example to our kids. And then I asked myself a lot of questions about smartphones, especially before buying the first smartphone to my eldest, who is now 13 and a half. I was concerned about the impact on her health and the mental health, and I wanted to know a bit more about the risk. So I did a research, and I wanted to know more about the impact on screens on children, their health and their development. And this is a bit of what I would like to share with you tonight. It's not going to be a scientific research, but I wanted to share with you some evidence that I have found in my literature review. So first of all, I wanted to start by asking you this question. How many screens do you have at home? You can use a chat to answer this question, and let's just have a look about the numbers of screens we have at home. Feel free to answer.
Is it including phones as well? Yes, that's
phones, connected watch, everything, screen. TV, iPad, smartphones, video game, console, etc. So we have 8, 5, 10.
I think people counting, huh? Because it's not.
Yeah, it's a lot, right? You're realizing how many screens, how.
Depends how many people in a family you have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just wanted to wait. Right, so 12, 8, 12, that's what I see on the chat. So I should say in average, what I see, it's usually around 8 in the families, plus 2, 3. So we realize we are surrounded by screens, and we live in this hyper-connected world for now, I think, more than 20 years, right? So, and especially with the smartphones, it's becoming more and more evident. But our children were born in this digital world in a way. They are used to screens. It's very fascinating to see how they can easily use smartphones. We think that they are born with them, but it's in a way not without risk. So I'm really grateful for technology in a way, because thanks to technology, we can have this conference tonight. We can share knowledge and experience. This is great thanks to technology. But at the same time, when technology is not used in a responsible way, we can see very negative risk on health, especially on children's health. So tonight, I'm not going to show you how to install the parental control, but I wanted to share with you some effects or impact of COVID-19 on the way, screens were used by adolescents and children. I wanted to share some scientific evidence, specifically on physical health and mental health, and some tips for good digital parenting. And lastly, some concrete tips to lead a healthy lifestyle with screens at home. And we will finish by a Q&A. So of course, as you can see in this on this slide, screens are central to our lives. Without screens, I mean, it would be difficult, right? But and thanks to them, we managed to survive the lockdown. However, when they are not used properly, responsibly by children, they can really imbalance their life. As you can see, screens have an impact on sleep, on physical activity, on communication, on learning, relaxing time, and eating. So that's why, as a life coach for children, this topic is so important to me, because 80% of the families I meet have a problem with the way screens are used at home. And that was already the case before the pandemic. Now we know that the pandemic has influenced behaviors of the younger generation in relation to health, lifestyle, and physical activity level to screen addiction, causes various diseases and mental health issues. There has been an increased prevalence of technology usage in adolescents and children during the lockdown, leaving its impact on their lives, either in a positive or in a negative way. And on this graph, you can see it shows children and teens from the US who spent more than 4 hours daily using electronics devices. And you can see the light blue is before COVID and the dark blue is during the pandemic. And that was in June 2020. So we can see that their percentage of children spending 4 hours on their devices has simply doubled during the pandemic. In a study published last September, the overall documented percentage increase of technology usage in children was about 15%. And we have seen that children with higher levels of anxiety were more likely to increase their technology used to connect with others. And of course, smartphones were a great way of escaping loneliness in lockdown, but as we are going to see, they are also responsible for causing serious mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, and also some cognitive issues. But let's start with by looking at what science says when children spend too much time on their screen. If we look at the brain functions, studies have shown that preschoolers who spend a lot of time on their screen showed delays in the motor development, language, problem solving, and personal and social skills. They also showed deficits in executive functions, such as working memory, perception, attention, and language acquisition. So these are children who usually read less and who will succeed in reading later than the others. It was also observed that children who saw violent content, for example, in video games or movies, had lower academic performance. The overstimulation of digital media tires the brain. It even shrinks it. So these kids need more time to learn anything. At the sleep level, evidence shows that preteens who sleep with their phone in their bedrooms sleep less and have poorer sleep quality. So, you know, there are the alerts, the notifications, all of these disrupt their sleep cycles, which is essential for learning. And then you have this content stimulation, can be, you know, social media or video games. And at the same time, you also have this blue light. And this blue light will actually disrupt the body's natural sleep cycle. It will affect the melatonin hormone, which is the sleep hormone. So being on screen right before bed is just like giving them a cup of coffee. They will keep awake. We have seen also on the physical health in terms of obesity. We have seen that children who are exposed to unhealthy food advertisements while on their devices will tend to snack more than the others, of course. And also when they do video games, they tend to just snack and not eat properly, not at least a balanced food. So which could lead to eating disorders. In addition, the blue light from screens can interfere with the ability to fall asleep, as I've just said, and lack of sleep can also contribute to the risk of obesity. At the physical activity level, when kids are playing video games, of course, they're not moving. Yeah? And when they spend so much time indoors without moving their body and snacking all the time, they're putting on weight. And obesity is another serious public health issue in our young generation here in our Western countries. There was a systematic meta-analysis done in 2011. It's already more than 10 years, but it was really interesting because it revealed that spending more than 2 hours a day watching television was detrimental to body composition, fitness, self-esteem, academic performance, and pro-social behavior. And in a cross-sectional survey study last year, in October last year, more physical activity and less screen time were associated with better mental health for children, accounting for pandemic stresses. And lastly, let's look at what it does on their eyes. Children and teenagers who use technology excessively have worse vision than the others who don't use screens as much, and they suffer from ocular fatigue, but also a lot of myopia due to the fact that they don't spend enough time outside because they just spend too much time inside and they lack this natural light from the sun. So this is, I think, the main negative effects on their physical health when they use screens just way too much. Let's look now at the negative impact on their mental health, and this is specifically from social media. Many studies have shown that high social media use predicts symptoms of depression, anxiety, and panic disorder in pre-adolescence. However, it was interesting because in another study, it was shown that children with moderate social media use have a better mental health than those who don't have access to social media at all. So if it was used in a moderate way with rules, like if parents put some limits, they had a better mental health than the one who either used too much social media or the one who didn't have access at all. So in a way, everything in moderation is good. We have also seen that teenagers who use social media in an active way, like the comments, posts, the likes, they're really active in a positive way. They had also a better mental health than the one who just scrolled passively on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So being active on social media is also better for your mental health. In 2012, smartphones began to be widely spread worldwide. And we have seen that over like 4 years after their introduction, it was noted in the US that the percentage of teenagers reporting drinking or having sex decreased significantly. But in terms of mental health, an increase in symptoms of loneliness, depression became evident. In addition, the number of cases of self-harm has tripled among adolescent girls between 10 and 14 years old. So they had a huge negative impact right after the introduction of smartphones. And because we were not aware of their negative effects. And the way, teenagers were in a way trained to use these devices. There has been also a relationship between internet addiction and self-harm and even suicide. The people who have these tendencies, they will look at websites with self-harm content. And the more they look at this website with the algorithm, they stay in these toxic bubbles and they will see always the same things that could also provoke such behaviors. So that's also the problem with the algorithm today. And of course, the victims of cyberbullying are also at greater risk of self-harm and suicide. What is very scary is the vicious circle in which teenage girls are getting. When you hear this from a researcher, I will just.
Aurélie, we don't hear you. You muted yourself. Still muted. Yeah.
Hear me, sorry. I will just read this quote from this researcher. What I worry about the most is the young people who say, when I'm feeling depressed or stressed or anxious, using social media makes me feel worse, but I do it anyway. I can't stop. So I really urge parents to delay access to social media as much as possible, because the tender minds of our adolescent girls are not ready and strong enough to face the pollution of images that are on Instagram or Snapchat. They're not ready to face very negative or mean comments and the pressure of the number of likes. So really, there's no push. You have time. You really have to, progressively introduce it, but don't just put Instagram or other social media like this without any guidance. For example, my daughter, and that was a big issue for me. I was wondering, so how will I do with this social media thing? And my daughter has actually no social media on her phone. She has now her first smartphone. She has WhatsApp, of course, to be connected with her friends and the class. But she has an Instagram account on my phone, which helped me to regulate it, which helped me to put a limit and to also see what is okay. So in a way, for me, it's a progressive way to introduce her to social media. I think the line of communication needs to be open. That's the most important thing. And regulation and moderation and limits are key vis-a-vis social media specifically. I'm not trying to make you scared here, but I wanted to make you aware of what could happen if we don't put limits to our children's. I want to share something now, which is a little bit more positive, and it concerns video game. I know a lot of people, a lot of parents kind of blame the video games because I know they're so addictive in a way also. But we have seen during the pandemic that they had actually very positive effect on mental health. Of course, people have played much more, and even children, adolescents, adults, they all have played much more during the pandemic. But we have seen that it has led to a relief of stress, a reduction of depression and anxiety. And we also know, and this is more and more documented, that video games increase cognition, especially the visual perception of things. It increases creativity and other skills. So in a way, video games is actually quite positive. The only negative impacts would be the wastage of time and the lack of physical activity. But if it's used in moderation, there are a lot of positive aspects to it. So again, it's always a question of balance. But now let's look at what happens when there is no balance anymore, and we are in an excessive use of technology. One study has found the 16% of prevalence of smartphone use in children during the pandemic was problematic. This means that these children suffer from internet addiction, gaming disorder, anxiety, depression, irritability, sleep disturbance, and poor health in general. And this is not a small number. 16% is actually quite high because it's only concerning children. So when do we start talking about excessive use? That's the big questions. We have talked a lot about screen time. Screen time is the key. But I don't think it's the right question we should ask ourselves after what we have lived after 2 years of pandemic, lockdowns, teleworking, etc. of course, screen time has exploded. And it's the same for kids who had to actually study online. They couldn't stay to their 1 or 2 hours per day. It was sometimes 7 hours a day. So the right question would be, what do you do on screen? With whom are you online? And how do you use your devices? That's the right question we should ask ourselves. Then I think the excessive use of technology is more about the level of discomfort. This is what will actually define whether the situation is problematic or not. The suffering of the child, but also the suffering of the people around him or her, the family. If the family is suffering, we have a problem. If the child is suffering, there is a problem. We also need to know that a child can very well spend several hours on a video game without any problem and continue to do sport, meet his friends, sleep well, do good at school. And another one may spend maybe only 20 minutes on Fortnite or another video game and have a fit after every time it stops. So each child is different. Each child has his own sensitivity, his own reactions, and this is what you have to observe mainly, his capacity to absorb technology. So when do we know that we are entering a problematic phase? I think these are the signs you should look at. This is the alerting signs. If your child is more isolated, he doesn't meet his friends like he used to, he's not really talking a lot anymore, if he has no other activities, his only interest is about gaming or being on his phone. If you look at his grades and it's going down, it's another sign. If he has a lot of negative emotions, he's irritable or not in a good mood every day, maybe he's putting on weight, which is a sign that maybe he's gaming during the night, he's not sleeping enough, he's snacking, and all this could also be a sign of putting on weight, and then he's starting in the morning. But again, all these signs, you might see 1 or 2 of them, but it's already, I think, a warning. You should investigate and talk with your child about his digital use. If it's so, I would recommend to take a break, just remove the devices for a while, for 1 week, or just to see if there is a change. And if it's really difficult for him, and you see like maybe there is some kind of, I don't like using the word addiction, but there is like an addictive in a way behavior to screens, it would be really good to talk to a professional. So in order to actually prevent this kind of situation, and here I'm really a person who is in favor of prevention, and prevention is better than cure, I think this is the best thing you can do, is to use this protective framework, because it's really a good way to, start early and help your children adopt healthy and a progressive use of technology. I don't know if you have knowledge about this framework. It's like the golden rule, the 3, 6, 9, 12, that were established by a French psychiatrist. His name is Serge Tisserand, and I think it really serves as a good reference. For example, he says, there is no television, no screen at all, no iPad, nothing, no smartphone before the age of 3. Because at this stage, the child needs to interact physically with his environment. He needs to be really physically stimulated. He needs to use his 5 senses. He needs to talk and see the eyes of people to understand and start learning the language. All that are really important, which is not given by an iPad, even though you have quote unquote education program, it's useless for children below 3. And then Serge Tisserand says, there is no personal games console before the age of 6. So no gaming before 6, no internet before the age of 9, and no social media before the age of 12. I will just bring your attention to this section from 6 to 9 years old. I think it's already a very good time to talk about internet. The 3 principles. The first one is Anything you post online will belong to the public domain. Everything you write online will stay there forever. And lastly, don't trust everything you read and see on the internet. So this aspect, really important aspect about internet, it's already good to introduce those between 6 and 9 years old before they actually go on internet alone, before the age of 10, 11. So these are, I think it's a good framework. It can be followed by any family. It's not too prescriptive, but at the same time, it gives you an indication to when you need to introduce what. I would like now to move to the second section. It's about good habits you can have as a parent to educate your children to technology. It's 5 educational keys which will enable you to remain in your role as parent, whatever the age of your children. So the first one is about sharing. Rather than giving your children their personal device from a very young age, just try to share, a family screen. It's managed by the parents. You know exactly what the content is on, and it's very carefully chosen by you according to your children's age. And it's also very good to share digital moments together, such as watching films together or playing video games together. All these moments of sharing, in a way, can be used to discuss characters or develop empathy or learn to tell a story. So you can really use the media as a source of discussion and sharing to encourage the good side of digital media, creativity, communication, learning, rather than a tools for a war between generations. So use it as a connection time. The second key is about alternating. So make sure there is always a good balance between, online activities and offline activities. So make sure that after 30 minutes or 1 hour of digital activity, your child is doing something outside with his hands, creative, which use other skills. Huh? And of course, during holidays or during the lockdown that we had, there was a lot of boredom by children, and it was not always easy to keep the iPad and not giving to them. So I would suggest that you create a list of activities that he likes doing, that he likes doing, and you keep this list somewhere in his room. And when he feels bored, you can just give this list to him, and he can pick an activity that he likes doing. So it gives him some ideas when he feels bored. But mainly any screen time should be followed by offline time. That's really important. The third key is about choosing. And choosing means that you don't let your child enter the digital Alibaba cave alone. You choose with them the game or the application they will be using. You will see if it's safe for them. You will take time also to sit next to them and accompany them to explain to them also the risk and danger that could happen. So choosing age-appropriate content, testing beforehand, and accompanying them in their media consumption is very important. And you can check the resources with this website called commonsensemedia.org. It's actually a very good website that has analyzed and evaluated the application or other things on media on the digital world, and you can really be safe that when Common Sense Media say it's for 6 years old, you can trust. It's good. It's been tested. So always check the quality of the different resources. And then you're probably asking yourself the following questions. What time limit should I set for my children? Of course, it will depend on their age, but this notion of limit is very important and needs to be respected. You need to explain to them the reason why there is a limit, and you need to stay firm. I know it's not always easy, but this is really key for them. So, of course, the rule will be different for each child, because, as I said, everybody's different. They have different attention span. And the effect of digital media is also will vary for each child. So you're really in the best position to know what is possible for your child. If they are having a fit after every time you turn off the TV, it's probably too much for them. Some guidance in terms of digital moment, I think for a child between 6 and 8, it shouldn't be more than 30 minutes in a row. So after 30 minutes, make a break, do something else, and then you can come back to it. But don't exceed 30 minutes. For children between 8 and 10, it should be 45 minutes. And then from 10 and above, you can have a 1-hour session. But then breaks are really important for their brain.
Mhm.
And then a last key is about inquiring. Guide your child through the digital world around them. If you're not very knowledgeable yourself, just be curious together. Who offers this service? What are the reasons for it? How does this social media work? Why is this game free? You can ask all these kind of questions with your child and get the answer together. So this is also a good way to show that, when we don't know, we inquire, we get the answer, we find a solution. So it's a good model. But most importantly, and I think this will have the greatest impact, is you are a role model. They are great imitators. So everything you do with your phone, don't be surprised, they'll do exactly the same as you. You can maybe take a moment, take your smartphone if it's near you. I'm sure it is. Grab your phone, go on the settings, and check digital well-being. I don't know if you have the same phone as me, but there is a section called something like digital well-being or something like this, or balance. And it enables you to look at the amount of time you have spent on each application. I was very scared when I looked how much time I could spend on WhatsApp or Instagram. I was scared, and it really hit me the other day. So I realized, wow, I'm not a good model. Even though they're not always around me, I can really be more cautious about it. So the more you distance yourself from your phone, the better you will accompany your children in the digital world without even realizing it. So just try to pass on the good habits to your children. And for example, it can be when you deactivate your notification. It's already a very good step. When you play as a family and not alone, or if you use your screens to learn something, to get an answer about a question you have, that's a good use of your screen. And mainly in the evening, try not to go to bed with your phone, because this shows also something to your kids that you are sleeping with your phone, and you don't need it to wake up in the morning. You can have a traditional alarm clock. It works very well. So in a way, you could create a box, and all the iPad and smartphones go into that box in the living room during the night. It's their house, but they don't go with you to your room. So more concretely, and this is our last part, is to look at some elements to find a better screen-life balance at home. Remember, a screen is not bad in itself. It's the use or the misuse of screens that is a threat. It's not the screen itself. So set rules on the use of devices as you would do with sugar. And this can be done in the form of a family media plan or a family charter, and everyone takes parts. So have a discussion with your children about where, when, and how long we can use screen. For example, you would ask your children, so where do you think we shouldn't have our screen? And you'll be surprised. They might say, we shouldn't have them at the table, at the dinner table, or we shouldn't sleep with them. They already know the right habits. So it's a discussion you can have as a family. When, maybe not before bed, not before sleeping. And then the question around how long, it will be different for each member of the family, of course. And when you set a time, really try to stick to it and don't try to be too flexible here, especially when they're young. I'm really talking about younger kids here. Let's say, from 5, 6 to 10, then it's another story. Time is difficult to manage with pre-adolescents. So it's a discussion around your values as well, what is important for you as a family. It's a really good opportunity to actually talk about what you want to do as a family, which are not online. And it gives you ideas for activities as well. When they're bored, you can have already this list ready. So be motivated, be persistent, and remember that the younger the children are, the easier it will be to raise their awareness by setting clear rules with them. Then don't use screens as a babysitter. It's really not a good idea because you will find it increasingly difficult to regulate your children's digital use, and you will, see yourself fighting against screen time all the time. So it's not easy to, it's an easy way, but it's not, in the long run, it's not giving you service. For example, if you go to the restaurants, instead of giving your smartphone to your kids while they're waiting, you can just bring with you some pens and papers or some games, and they can just wait with very interactive or playful things. Don't use it as a reward. That's another important advice, because if you use it as a reward, you are actually reinforcing their importance, and they will want more and more. So remember, the real reward for a child is the attention of their parents. That's the most important thing for them, your attention. A child between 6 and 12 needs to move at least 1 hour per day, and 20 minutes of which should be more intense physical exercise. So getting into the habit of getting outside every day, being active, is a very good cure for today's hyperconnectivity that drains energy and the happiness from our children. Children need to play, they need to be in a very stimulating environment, and if it's not stimulating, well, it's so easy to seek it in the virtual world. So really, propose activities that they like, and have this list of activities ready when they're bored. The most important thing, I think, in our hyper-connected world is to keep this human connection. This is so important, and there are so many ways you can really strengthen this connection. As I said, children need attention. They need your attention, and if you could at least spend 15 minutes every day, 100% attention on your children. For example, you could, at bedtime, you can ask, what they liked about their day, what they're grateful for, what they didn't like about their day, what was difficult for them. And here you're really creating a deep connection. It's a discussion at another level. And this is what they need. They need to be heard. They need to be loved. They need to be, listened to, and they need your affection. So if you're with your children scrolling at the same time, and watching and answering emails, it's not the same. And your eye contact is also really key, especially for younger children as well. Then another way to connect is, I don't know if you heard about the 8-second hugs. The 8-second hug is a great way to connect, of course, but your brain needs this time, 8 seconds, to release the oxytocin. Oxytocin is the attachment and well-being hormone, and it also releases, it brings down the stress hormone. So when you have a long hug like this, it distresses you, and it's a very nice and strong moment of connection, which is good for everybody. You can also cook together, you can share meals together, you can do bedtime routine together, you can walk in nature together. I know you have many ideas for that, but remember, it's this collection of very simple moments that reinforce the real connection. These are the best souvenirs, the best memories for your kids. And lastly, you can also invent your own digital detox. When you feel that you've been too much on your screen, everybody is like not talking to each other anymore. It's time to put them in a big sleeping bag for a day or maybe a weekend if you can. And you really live as you used to live in the 80s. So there is no phone, there is no computer. You listen to music on your CD player. You look at your pictures in the album. And it's a discovery for your kids too. They don't know this era where there was no phone, no screen. So it's interesting for them to understand how we used to live in those days. I did it with my family. It was great. It was a very good experience. And it generated a lot of discussion about this period of time. So of course, it's not easy to put all these things in place and be consistent and be firm. Sometimes we need some support, and this is why I'm here, to support you and your family. And I have to offer two things I can do with your family. The first one is for your children, to balance the internet connection with the family connection. One service is a tailor-made individual coaching program for children. So in this coaching program, which can last between 2 months and 7 months, I really give them tools to manage screens in a responsible way, to manage their emotions, which can be linked to their virtual world, but also their physical world, to enhance their communication skills, and to strengthen their self-confidence. They will also get to know the 7 key ingredients for a balanced lifestyle. And it's really a play-based approach for children from 7 years old and above. So that's very centered to on the kids. And another program is a family coaching program for a better screen-life balance. This is shorter, it's 4 sessions. It can be online or in presence. And again, the activities are for the whole family to better manage screens, emotions, and communication at home, to really strengthen this family connection. And of course, it's a playful and creative approach again. This is all about what I do. It's playing, but behind each game, there is a message. There is something that they can learn and they can practice. And then I also wanted to, give you my contact details. If you have questions or you want to know more about these programs, feel free to drop me an email. Otherwise, in conclusion, I would like to say that technology is not about to disappear, that's for sure. We need to live with it, but we need also to show our kids how they can integrate this into their life, which is not always easy. So as you have seen, there is a progressive way we can follow. And your role as a parent is really to be aware of its impacts, to seek balance, and to be role models. There is no standard policy for this. You know best what your children need according to their ages, their personality, their sensitivity. This is the most important. So I'm not going to give you very strict rules because each one is different. But your goal is to raise responsible children in an atmosphere of trust, support, and parental control. And spying our children without open communication will not achieve this. So really keep open, talk to your children, be interested in what they're doing online, because this is also a way to connect in a nice way and to find out what interests them, because it's a big part of their life and they need also to be recognized here. Create online social spaces as you would children hanging out at a friend's house. You trust, you verify, and then you respect their privacy. So if you're caring and listening and setting limits, you can consider yourself excellent digital parents. Thank you so much. I think we have some time for some Q&A.